imagine finding yourself in a trench where your world is 10 or 12 feet wide and 7 feet tall and it's all mud, and you're going, well, how did I get here?
They're going stir crazy on the in-betweens. What do you do to stay centered, to not lose your mind?
And they were stuck in hell, basically. So they needed things to occupy their mind and their time.
Now you're connecting the dots of not only you have the guy's name, but what? This is insane. Welcome, guys, to another episode of History Roundtable. Here we have Josh, and you'll notice that there's a new addition to the table. This is Bob Perkins. This is a longtime friend of mine, and you may recognize him from something we did back in the day called Pawn Stars. It was just a little show, but who knew that that show would be what it is today? But Bob and I have been working for a long time. We love the same things, and he brought a couple of things to my attention that I said, you know what? We have to do this. We have to cover this on the show. So, Josh, do you have a clue what we're looking at that's on? It won't even fit on the tray.
But yeah, I've got an idea, but I haven't seen one done quite like this. What's a little history on these? What's the date range?
All right, I'm just going to throw this right to you, Bob. What are we looking at here? And let's just start with the biggest thing, which is obviously it's brass.
Yeah, the term is trench art. And you can kind of relate if you know anything about the whaling period with scrimshaw on whale's teeth and whatnot. This World War I in particular, they had a lot of time on their hands and they were stuck in hell, basically. So they needed things to occupy their mind and their time. And this ended up being one of the ways that you could express yourself and at the same time record what you'd been through and where you'd been. And so trench art is a form of taking these shells, almost always brass, and doing your artwork on it. And it's actually pretty amazing. Sometimes the artwork was real crude. Sometimes it was exceptionally good. You're thinking, wow, that's pretty talented. And again, I can't imagine how much time it took to do this, but the fact that it is brass and the fact that it does survive over time, over 100 years later, here we go with a piece of history that you could, again, hold in your hand. And it's fascinating.
And we're going to cut the B-roll. We're going to do a deep dive on all the markings that are, etched onto these shell casings. But there's more to the backstory. And again, let's just put it out there that none of us here were there. So we are just going on the accounts from the period, what they were going through. And, of course, what you can read online in books, but, there's been movies made, there's documentaries about, what transpired in World War I, and it's still somewhat fresh in our history that those accounts are factual. The longer time goes on, the truth kind of gets twisted around to conform to the current times. And that's a whole other thing that we should talk about. But I'll paint a picture for you that if you can imagine, again, this is just what I'm reading, little factoids, but there were up to 35,000 miles of trenches.
I didn't
now,
know that.
Think about that. Think about that. That is a tremendous amount of earthwork to begin with. But, and those nicknames of the Badlands and this is hell and West Hell and East Hell and
no man's land.
Yeah, no man's land. Where I can't imagine what these guys were going through and the brutality of it. And not to mention the disease that was rampant. You had trench mouth, you had trench foot, you had all these things that are from that period and what they were dealing with.
You lived like a rat with the rats.
Right.
And it was
so, again, I'm just assuming, I like to work with my hands. Well, a lot of these soldiers were carpenters. They were, whatever. They're going stir crazy on the in-betweens. What do you do to stay centered, to not lose your mind? I mean, you're also dealing with artillery, explosions all the time, where shell shock, all this stuff was...
The threat of gas.
Oh, the mustard gas. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm just kind of hitting the surface of all these things, but I don't know. So when you look at something like this, and okay, guys, what's cool is, yes, these things are decorated, but there's more to this. The guy's name that did the work is etched on each one of these pieces and where he was. So that's cool in its own right, but there's more that came with this.
There is.
That you never see. And so now we're going to get into this part. Now, mind you, World War I started roughly 1914, and the United States got pushed into it around 1917 into 18. So now you're connecting the dots of not only you have the guy's name, but this is insane. Here's the guy's photograph. And then what else do you got?
We've got the company roster, and it tells you this was the 161st Infantry, and our fella's right on here. Can you find him?
Yep. And now I'm gonna butcher how this guy's last name is pronounced.
It's tough,
but so on one of these artillery shells, he is listed as a lieutenant, and we'll get in the B-roll here all the different markings. But so when he was with a different regiment at the time, and then here, this one, I believe, has his name, and again, his name, George W. Tautfest. And I'm probably mispronouncing that, but Tautfest. I've never heard of that last name before, ever, Tautfest. But on this roster, he's listed as a sergeant. So obviously there was some promotion going on, but
I don't think he was a sergeant when this picture was taken.
Probably not.
Probably an enlistment photograph.
But, this is clearly dated, this is April 1st of 16 to October of 18. And this has him as sergeant of the 101st. It just, from, I guess, when he was there to when he left.
Yeah, gotcha.
Being that from 16 to 18. But when this was made, obviously showing that to 18 he survived it, but as a sergeant. And all of this corresponds to the roster, which is great. Here's sergeant of the 161st Infantry. That matches here. And then let's see what else is here. USA, and then the 41st Division is also here, and that is also here. It's awesome when you can connect the dots. And that's what, makes what we do so much fun, when you actually have access to the real information and you don't have to do a lot of guesswork. The other thing is that when Tony gets in real sharp, and we'll do with under magnification, you'll see that whatever tools that this gentleman was using was right there laying next to him. And he's just stippling and whatever just to pass the time.
Pieces of nails, horseshoes.
Yeah, right.
He probably had to make his own hammers and just... So he had to get creative.
Yeah, I'll show you, Tony.
Even the artwork on that roster, it just tells you of a time that has long gone.
So right here, there's his name, George W. Tautfest. But, and just kind of looking at these things, and I always say, if an item could talk to you, what would it say? Well, it's starting to talk to you. Look at the symbolism here. Is this the dove of freedom? Is it? Is it what?
It's peace dove.
But let's see here.
It could be a carrier pigeon for
that too.
Yeah.
So they're really commemorating, especially Lorraine. This is all these were major battles that took place on the German border. And the other part of what's important is to know that communications were very limited at that time. So I've read, and it makes sense, that a lot of this stuff, especially before the United States got involved, the trench art were souvenirs, but they were intentionally sent back to their families as proof that they're still alive. Which, wow. I mean, wouldn't a simple letter suffice? Well, this was bigger and better, and I guess, again, it served multiple purposes because you were able to affix your mind to an inanimate object to try to get away from this horrendous, chaos.
Can you imagine finding yourself in a trench where your world is 10 or 12 feet wide and 7 feet tall and it's all mud, and you're going, well, how did I get here? Yeah. And then you got to get your mind off of it. And the amount of time you spent doing nothing versus the time when you were actually in combat was shockingly, you had time to die of the flu rather than a bullet.
Right.
You just had to do something. And this is something that would take your mind off of a madness.
And they didn't, and again, you'll hear me say that expression, they didn't waste anything. Well, especially in this circumstance, you're in a foreign country, you're in this trench, and God knows what else is in that trench with you, being rats and the disease and the dead and the wounded and whatever, all the above. That these things were, there's even, there's lighters that are made from, there's so many different things. Wedding bands. And certain shells would have some kind of a copper ring that would always be removed, and they make bracelets out of them and all this different stuff. So there's a whole myriad of things that were developed and produced just from this one historical event.
Wow. When I look at this, I can't get any concept of how much time was involved because this is complete. At some point, he said, I'm done.
Right.
And I don't know how much time this took because how you lay it out. Did they take pencils and mark what they wanted to do, or did you just start working?
And, yes, of course, some of the stuff was made in the mud, in the thick of it. Others were made off, the front line, if you will. So, you don't really know, was this done while he's there, ducking bullets going over his head? Or was this done where, off in the camp where they had some time to relax? And here's the other thing. How much noise could you make within the trenches? If you had a whole bunch of guys banging and clanging on this brass, maybe that wasn't the thing to do when you're trying to keep things quiet.
Might put off the enemy, though.
I don't know.
What the hell's going on over there?
Yeah. So I don't know. It's fascinating to me. And as much as it is fascinating, it's scary as hell because I wouldn't have wanted to be there. Who would? But these guys that were and that survived it, this is mind-blowing to me.
Well, the song Over There, America wanted to get into that war and end it. And the fact that they willingly enlisted, they weren't drafted.
Right.
And they went over and they got in those trenches and they kicked some serious booty. But the fact that we have those kind of people is, we had them then, we got them now. We got warriors today that just willing to go in harm's way.
Full episodes are now on Patreon and coming soon through YouTube memberships. Join us there for early access, bonus content, and exclusive behind-the-scenes history. Your support helps us keep history and this channel alive. Because YouTube doesn't.